The amphitheater hummed with low, alien chatter. Layered voices of 100 species, each with its own cadence, tone, and disdain. The air shimmered faintly with the hum of translation fields. At the center, beneath the white glare of the dome lights, stood Professor Terrell Vax, wings folded neatly behind him, his eyes sharp and metallic like polished obsidian. "Today," he announced, "we examine the most peculiar subject of galactic anthropology, human mythology." A ripple of laughter spread across the tiers. Somewhere in the back, a reptilian cadet hissed a slur in his native tongue. The translator rendered it softly, "Dreamers of dirt and blood." At the front row sat 5 human cadets in crisp, dark uniforms. None moved. None smiled. Trell extended a taloned finger, and the air flickered. Holographic projections spun to life. Images of Hercules slaying beasts, Joan of Arc burning, a man nailed to a cross beneath storm clouds. "Observe," Trell said, pacing. "Primitive self-deification. Tales of men defeating death, beasts, even gods. Psychological compensation for their species' fragility." The class laughed again. The humans didn't. One alien cadet raised a limb. "Professor, are these stories believed by their kind?" "Oh yes," Trell said. "Even after their integration into the coalition, they cling to these fantasies. They worship the idea of sacrifice." He let the word hang like something foul, a clear indicator of death obsession and emotional instability. He turned toward the humans, feathers glinting. "Tell me, Cadet Hale, would you die for one of these myths?" The cadet's jaw tightened. "We don't die for myths, sir. We die for each other." The laughter dimmed, uncertain now. Terrell smiled thinly. "And you believe that makes you different from beasts?" The door opened. The laughter stopped. Commander Arden Voss stepped inside. His presence seemed to quiet the air itself. No insignia glittered on his uniform, no medals gleamed, only the faint mark of the Asterion campaign on his collar. His eyes scanned the hall with soldier's calm before resting on the projection of a human burning at the stake. "Permission to observe, Professor?" His voice was steady, low, controlled. "Of course, Commander," Terrell said, mock gracious. "You may find our discussion enlightening." Voss walked down the steps and stood at the side of the stage, hands clasped behind him. "Tell me," Terrell continued, "why does your species cling to myth? Surely you, of all humans, have outgrown such stories." Voss studied the hologram, the woman's face frozen mid-scream. "Because myth remembers what history forgets," he said quietly. A murmur rippled through the room. Terrell tilted his head. Philosophy. How charming, but irrelevant. "Myths are primitive attempts to assign meaning where none exists." Voss met his gaze. "Meaning exists where someone chooses to stand." Terrell's feathers twitched. "Ah yes, the legendary human stubbornness. Standing against the inevitable." He gestured, and the holograms shifted. Humans charging alien war beasts, ancient warriors with swords raised against impossible odds. This pattern repeats across their art, their legends, their wars, defiance as a reflex. "Not a reflex," Voss said. "A decision." The professor's tone sharpened. "A decision rooted in delusion. You humans romanticize pain and call it courage. The galaxy has evolved beyond such primitive displays." Voss took a step closer. The holograms flickered in his reflection. "Evolved?" He looked around at the alien cadets, their perfect uniforms, their unscarred faces. "Then why does every war you fight end the same way? You calculate, retreat, surrender. You've evolved out of fear, not wisdom." The silence was heavy. Terrell's feathers flared slightly, an involuntary gesture of irritation. "You mistake recklessness for courage, Commander. Your kind burns bright and dies quickly. We endure." Voss's eyes narrowed just enough to draw a shiver through the room. "Endurance isn't the same as living." The professor smiled tightly. "Then perhaps you can educate us. Show us what separates your myths from madness." A faint smirk crossed Voss's face. "You wouldn't believe me." "Try us." Voss turned toward the projection controls. The hologram flickered again, now showing the face of a human marine standing in the rain of the Asterion rift, armor cracked, blood in his teeth. Terrell frowned. "Ah, the famous Asterion footage. You think your war proves something?" "I think it reminds something," Voss replied. "You said our myths are lies. But tell me, when a soldier holds the line knowing he'll die, what's that called in your language?" The professor hesitated. "Statistical failure." Voss chuckled once, not from amusement but disbelief. "That's why you'll never understand us." He looked at the human cadets. "You remember what they taught us on Earth? Myths are warnings, lessons carved in fire. They tell us who we were and what we refuse to become again." He turned back to the aliens. "Every story you mocked was written by someone who lived it." The room was utterly still. Trell broke the silence with a clipped tone. "Then prove it. Bring us your evidence. Let us see these truths." Voss's expression didn't change. "Tomorrow, I'll show you something real." Trell's beak curved. "Excellent. Perhaps then, Commander, we can finally bury these human fantasies." Voss's voice was soft, almost kind. "Careful, Professor. Some graves have teeth." He turned and walked up the steps, the sound of his boots echoing in the dome. The human cadets rose silently, following him out. For a long moment, no one spoke. The holograms still glowed, human figures frozen mid-battle, blades raised against monsters. A young alien cadet broke the silence. "Professor." "What if he's right?" Tyrell didn't answer. His eyes lingered on the projection of the soldier standing against a beast 10 times his size. In the soldier's face, battered, bloody, unbowed, there was something unsettlingly familiar. He dismissed the image with a flick of his claw, but the afterimage burned in his mind. Outside, through the Academy's glass walls, the curve of Veleth Prime shone blue and silent. The humans walked across the causeway, their reflections trailing like shadows. Cadet Hale glanced at Voss. "Sir, why didn't you just tell him the truth?" Voss's jaw flexed. "Truth isn't told," he said. "It's shown." They reached the barracks. The commander paused, looking out at the stars. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, almost to himself, "they'll see why our myths have teeth." The cadets exchanged a glance but said nothing. Behind them, the lights of the Academy flickered against the night. Somewhere deep inside, the old ghosts of Earth's legends stirred. The galaxy had called them stories. Tomorrow, it would learn they were warnings. The next day, the amphitheater was packed. Word had spread across the Academy. The human commander was going to prove that Earth's myths were true. Every seat was filled, from reptilian war clans to crystalline thinkers of the outer rings. Even the air seemed tighter, charged with curiosity and condescension. Professor Tyrell Vax stood at the central dais, feathers sleek and gleaming. His expression was controlled, but the gleam in his eyes betrayed anticipation. "Commander Voss," he began smoothly, "the galaxy awaits your enlightenment." Commander Arden Voss walked down the steps, calm, deliberate. His uniform bore no decoration, only the mark of service. Behind him, 5 human cadets carried a small hollow core encased in reinforced glass. When they reached the podium, Voss placed it down gently. "This isn't myth," he said quietly. "It's memory." A low murmur rippled through the audience. Trell gestured toward the hollow field. "Proceed. Let the galaxy witness the human version of truth." Voss tapped the control panel. The lights dimmed, and the first image bloomed into existence, a war-torn planet under crimson skies. The caption appeared, "Asterion Rift, Cycle 32. The field of view widened. Crashed ships burned across the horizon. Dozens of alien soldiers in coalition armor were retreating through ash and smoke. Then came the humans, 20 of them, moving uphill through plasma fire, faces streaked with soot and blood. Their vitals blinked faintly on the corner of the screen, all below survival threshold. Yet they advanced. The audience leaned forward. Trell's voice broke the silence. "A tactical maneuver. A futile one." Voss didn't look at him. "Watch." The scene shifted to a close view, human Marines forming a circle around wounded allies. The outer rim of their armor burned white-hot. Every blast that hit them melted plating and flesh alike. They didn't flinch. One by one, they passed ammunition inward. The leader, helmet shattered, one eye clouded, smiled as he lifted a flag torn from a transport hull and drove it into the mud. A reptilian cadet whispered, "They were already dying." Voss nodded once. Exactly, Trell's feathers twitched. So they chose pointless martyrdom. Voss turned toward him slowly. Not pointless. Purpose doesn't die when the body does. The footage continued. Sensors confirmed heart rates collapsing, bodies shutting down, yet hands still pulled triggers. When the feed finally cut, the humans were motionless, half buried in ash, still facing the enemy's last known direction. The room was silent. Then Terrell spoke, his tone clipped. You cannot expect us to interpret biochemical spasms as heroism. Dying reflexively is not bravery. Voss keyed another sequence. Then define this. The feed shifted again. A different angle, captured from an alien medic drone after the battle. The humans lay in a ring of fused earth. Around them, dead enemy units, thousands. Their armor melted into the ground like slag. The drone's analysis overlaid the scene. Enemy detonation prevented by last-minute signal jamming. Source unknown. Voss said quietly, "That signal came from this soldier." He magnified a still image. A young woman in shattered armor, one hand fused to a control pad, eyes open, unfocused. She transmitted the countercode manually as her suit melted. The last transmission was one line. The text appeared on the screen, written in trembling human script. "Tell them we remembered." The amphitheater was utterly still. Even the translator hum seemed to fade. Terrell folded his arms. "You mean to imply these actions represent something divine?" Voss's tone hardened. "No, I mean they represent something real." He took a step closer to the audience. "You laugh at our myths, at men who fought gods, at women who burned for ideals. You call them stories. But tell me, what's the difference between a myth and a memory no one believes?" A crystalline cadet spoke up hesitantly. "But those acts, they exceed natural limits. How could they function beyond death?" Voss met her gaze. "Because meaning can move a body farther than fear ever could." Terrell's feathers bristled. "Emotion cannot override biology." Voss keyed another image. "Then explain this. The feed zoomed in on a human medic's vitals. Heartbeat stopped at timestamp 04-11-23. Yet the same feed showed his hands still working, binding a wound on a fallen alien officer. The alien species, Valerian. Terrell's own kind. When the human's body finally collapsed, the alien's vital signs stabilized. Voss looked up. That Valerian was rescued, recovered, and testified. "Your own people recorded this footage," Terrell's voice faltered. "That? Impossible." Voss's tone dropped, soft but cutting. He said the human smiled at him before dying. "Do you know what the human said?" The professor's throat clicked. "What?" Voss whispered, "We're not myths. We're just old stories with new uniforms." The room felt like vacuum. No one moved. Voss turned the projection off. The lights came back slowly, revealing faces, thoughtful, pale, uneasy. He let the silence stretch, then spoke quietly. "You think myth is fiction because it comforts you. It lets you believe you've outgrown the things that built you. But myth isn't fantasy. It's instruction. Every story we tell is a map of the limits we've crossed." Terrell recovered enough to sneer faintly. "And yet you nearly went extinct during that same war. Your courage didn't save you from your own destruction." Voss met his gaze evenly. "Courage isn't about avoiding death. It's about choosing what deserves it." A low murmur moved through the hall. Terrell, flustered, snapped, "And what did it earn you, Commander? A pyre of your kind? A reputation as zealots who believe in ghosts?" Voss's voice was calm again. "No. It earned us a galaxy that now exists because those ghosts held the line while the rest ran." He tapped the holocore once more, and the last image filled the air. Not a battle, not a death. Just a soldier sitting in the mud, helmet off, rain falling over his face as he looked up toward a sky burning with re-entry trails. "That man was the last survivor of his unit," Voss said softly. "When they found him, he'd been sitting like that for 3 days. He said he was waiting for relief. When told the battle was over, he only asked one question. Did we hold?" No one spoke. Trell's voice, when it came, was quiet. "And you call this faith?" Voss shook his head. "No, we call it memory. You call them myths because they frighten you. The idea that something weaker, smaller, mortal can face oblivion and not flinch. The lights brightened. The moment fractured. Some cadets looked away. Others stared at the floor, trying to understand what they'd just seen. Voss turned to leave, then paused at the steps. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'll show you what your own records say about us. You mocked human stories. Wait until you see the ones your ancestors tried to erase." He walked out without waiting for dismissal. Trell remained still, staring at the dark hollow core. His reflection trembled across its surface. Wings, morning light streamed through the Academy's glass dome, refracting across its crystalline beams like shards of fire. The hall was quieter than usual. No laughter, no jeers, no casual arrogance. Word of the human commander's presentation had spread far beyond the Academy's walls. Some came to mock him. Now they came to understand. Professor Terrell Vax entered the empty amphitheater early. He moved slowly, wings folded close, eyes fixed on the hollow core still resting at the podium. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that human medic's hand, the one that moved after the heartbeat stopped. He had dismissed courage as a chemical misfire. Now the certainty cracked. The door hissed open behind him. Commander Arden Voss stepped inside. No escort this time? No cadets, just him. The hall's echo carried his footsteps until he stopped at the edge of the dais. Trell didn't turn around. "You came alone," he said. "I didn't need an audience today." Silence stretched. Finally, the professor asked, voice low, "Why show us this? What do you gain by tearing down our certainty?" Voss walked past him to the center of the room. "Because ignorance is dangerous. The galaxy keeps mistaking peace for wisdom. You've forgotten what it costs to have both." Trell studied him, the human's calm face, eyes worn by memory. "You think violence defines meaning?" "No," Voss said. "Sacrifice does." He placed another chip into the hollow core. The lights dimmed again, revealing a different set of recordings. Not battlefield footage this time, but recovered fragments of alien archives. The first was from Valerian history, Terrell's own people. Ancient carvings on stone, translated text shimmering across the air. It depicted winged warriors beside figures unmistakably human. "Your legends," Voss said softly. "Valerian dawn myths, the winged guard and the fireborn allies who defended the sky citadel. You called them celestial visitors." Terrell's feathers stiffened. "Those are allegories." Voss adjusted the playback. The projection zoomed in on a carving's lower edge. Script etched beneath the stone wings. "They came from the dark world, flesh fragile, will unbending. They burned beside us." The professor stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "This can't be real. These inscriptions were carbon dated to 30,000 cycles before your written history began," Voss finished. "We found them on your homeworld's outer ruins during the rift reclamation. You called them symbols. We recognized them as coordinates, Earth's ancient sky pattern, dated from a different star age." The silence deepened. Voss deactivated the projection. "You laughed at our myths, but maybe they were never ours alone." Trell stood motionless, processing. "You're saying your species fought beside ours?" "I'm saying you remember us the way we remember gods, blurred by time, colored by fear. Maybe we were never divine. Maybe we were just human, again and again, wherever courage was needed." Terrell's wings shifted, feathers rustling like dry leaves. "You believe humanity's existence echoes through other species' histories?" "I believe courage echoes. And we happen to carry it loudly." The professor turned away, pacing toward the gallery seats. "You speak of courage as if it's yours to own." Voss's reply came steady, measured. "No one owns it. But someone has to remind the galaxy what it looks like." He walked to the side wall. A single light illuminated the memorial plaque, names of humans and aliens alike who had died during the Asterion rift. Beneath them was etched a single line. "We stood together when logic said run." Terrell's gaze lingered there. "I called your myths dangerous because they glorify struggle. Now I see the danger wasn't belief, it was forgetting." He faced Voss fully now, feathers lowered, tone stripped of pride. "I mocked you. I thought emotion was weakness. But what I saw yesterday? It wasn't madness. It was conviction, something we no longer understand. Voss didn't smile. Understanding isn't the goal. Remembering is. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small, dented data plate. This belonged to one of the soldiers from the footage. The one who transmitted the code. Terrell hesitated before taking it. The metal was warm from Voss's hand. Scratched on its side were 2 words in human script. Hold fast. Terrell ran a claw over the letters. A primitive phrase. Voss nodded. Simple, unbreakable. Every species has a version of it. You just stopped meaning yours. The professor looked down at the data plate for a long time. The realization settled heavy. Not shame, but awe. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Tomorrow I have another lecture scheduled. I will speak again of myths, but not to ridicule them. He looked up, eyes bright against the shadows. I will tell them that myths are memory, Commander. That they're the bloodlines of meaning itself. Voss gave a small nod. Good. Then maybe the next generation won't laugh when they hear ours. They stood in silence for a moment. The only sound the low hum of the dome's shields. Then Terrell said softly, Your people. You carry ghosts. Voss turned toward the wide glass wall where the curve of the planet glowed faintly blue. We don't carry them, he said. We walk beside them. The professor followed his gaze. Outside, shuttles drifted through the clouds, their silver trails catching the sun. He found himself imagining those ancient warriors again. Not gods, not myths, but humans climbing into impossible skies, daring to stand where reason broke. He exhaled slowly. Perhaps every legend begins the same way, with someone deciding to stand. Voss's mouth tightened into the hint of a smile. And ends when someone forgets why. Terrell looked down at the plate once more, tracing the carved words with the tip of his claw. Hold fast, he repeated quietly. Later that day, the amphitheater filled again, this time by his request. The same students who had mocked humanity gathered, waiting for another lecture of superiority. Terrell walked to the center, the hollow core beside him, its surface reflecting the morning's light. He looked at the crowd, hundreds of faces, young, certain, untested. He activated the projection. It showed the same images from before, the humans, the flames, the defiance. Gasps rippled through the hall, but Terrell raised a hand. This, he said, his voice carrying through the dome, is not insanity. It is clarity. These beings remind us that logic is not the highest virtue. It is only the safest. He turned, eyes sweeping over them. Remember this when you stand before fear. Myths are not lies. They are warnings from those who have already bled for your comfort. The room was silent. Even the translation hum seemed reverent. Voss watched from the shadows at the back, arms folded. Terrell concluded quietly, You will leave this place believing in equations and probabilities. But one day, when the numbers fail, remember the stories of the ones who didn't. He looked toward the back of the hall, where Voss stood still as stone. Their eyes met across the distance. Terrell said clearly for all to hear, In a galaxy of gods, it was humanity who remembered how to be one. The lights dimmed. The projection faded. No applause followed, only silence, deep, contemplative, and unbroken. Outside, stars blinked against the endless dark, and somewhere beyond them, the ghosts of old heroes stirred once more, their stories carried forward by those finally willing to listen. Three days after the lecture that silenced an entire academy, the Galactic Council sent for Commander Arden Voss. The summons was brief. Attendance required at High Assembly Hall. Velath Prime. Subject, Human Cultural Propaganda Inquiry. He read the message twice, then folded it away. He'd expected this. Truth once spoken never stayed caged for long. When he arrived, the council chamber's atmosphere was colder than any battlefield. The room was built like a cathedral, walls of translucent alloy, light cascading through the ceiling's massive window. 12 counselors sat in an arc above, each representing a different species. Their symbols glowed faintly behind them like distant stars. Terrell stood near the center dais, no longer a lecturer, but summoned as witness. He didn't meet Voss's gaze, though his feathers were duller now. Humility etched into his posture. "Commander Arden Voss," intoned the presiding counselor, a crystalline being named Sithar Prime, its voice resonant and metallic. "Your presentation is spread through the academy and beyond. You are accused of inciting cultural unrest through false historical claims." Voss didn't bow. He simply said, "Truth isn't unrest. It's resistance to decay." Murmurs fluttered through the chamber. Counselor Sithar continued, "You have asserted that human myths correspond to verified historical events, that humans fought alongside other species before our recorded era. Do you stand by that claim?" "Yes. And your proof?" Voss reached into his jacket and produced a single hollow disk, the one recovered from Valerian ruins. He set it on the table before them. "You can read this yourself. It's not human-made. You can carbon date it to your own prehistory. It shows our alliance, your ancestors' wings beside our fire. The hollow field came alive, casting images above the assembly, carvings, battles, ancient figures wielding light lances beside humans in armor of iron and flame. The inscriptions gleamed again. They burned beside us. Gasps rippled across the chamber. One counselor, reptilian and sharp-voiced, slammed a scaled hand on the desk. "This could be forgery." Voss didn't flinch. "Then test it. Run your scanners. Run 100. You'll find the same thing, but not a lie, just something your historians were too proud to remember." Sithar's crystal facets shifted color, discomfort, maybe curiosity. "And what do you claim this means, Commander?" "That myths are memory," Voss said simply. "You've all built empires on forgetting. Humans just never learned how to stop remembering." Terrell finally spoke. His voice was steady but softer than before. "I have reviewed the material myself. Its age predates Valerian literacy. The cross-linguistic symbols align with primitive Terran runes. You support this?" another counselor demanded. Terrell met their gaze. "I support truth, and I no longer believe it's uniquely human." The council erupted into murmurs again. Sithar raised a crystalline hand. "Silence." The air quieted. Voss stood motionless under their scrutiny, the hollow's glow reflecting off his uniform. The elder counselor leaned forward, facets shimmering like slow lightning. "And what, Commander Voss, is your purpose in bringing this truth to light?" Voss's eyes hardened. "To remind the galaxy what courage looked like before you all buried it under peace treaties and comfort." He let the words hang. "You've made safety your religion. You've forgotten that survival means nothing without meaning," the reptilian counselor hissed. "Meaning does not win wars." Voss looked directly at him. "No, but it ends them." A long silence followed. Finally, Sithar said, "And you, Professor Terrell, what have you learned from this revelation?" Terrell's feathers trembled faintly. "That emotion is not primitive. It is memory's language. I've taught logic my whole life, but yesterday, a human soldier taught me clarity." He gestured to the projection still flickering above. "They bleed, they die, they rise. Not because it is rational, but because someone has to." Voss gave a small nod, but said nothing. Sithar sat back, luminous eyes unreadable. "We cannot rewrite history based on fragments and sentiment. However," the voice softened slightly, "perhaps the galaxy's youngest species still carries something the old ones have lost." Voss turned toward the assembly. "It's not something we carry. It's what carries us." The chamber fell quiet again. After several long moments, the crystalline counselor inclined its head. "Commander Voss, your record will remain under review, but your evidence will be preserved. Dismissed." Voss didn't salute. He simply picked up the holodisk and walked out, boots echoing through the vaulted corridor. Terrell caught up with him outside. "You risked everything," the professor said quietly. Voss kept walking. "Truth's lighter than a lie. Easier to carry." They stepped onto the outer balcony overlooking the planet. The horizon shimmered gold, clouds drifting between spires of the academy below. Trell leaned on the railing, wings catching the wind. When I first met you, I thought humans were relics pretending to be relevant. Now I think you're mirrors showing us what we've become. Voss's gaze stayed on the horizon. And what's that? Comfortable, Tyrell said. Too comfortable to deserve the peace we inherited. Voss nodded slowly. Then wake them, Tyrell smiled faintly. I will. They stood in silence for a while, watching shuttle lights trace across the atmosphere. Below, the cadets trained, formations moving with new precision, but also, perhaps, new purpose. Trell's feathers ruffled in the wind. You know, Commander, in Valerian culture, we say those who remember the beginning will never fear the end. Voss looked over. In ours, he said, we say legends never die. They just wait for someone stubborn enough to believe them again. A faint smile touched the professor's beak. And you believe? I've seen enough not to need belief. They stood together as the sun broke fully through the haze, its light painting the sky in molten gold. Somewhere beyond, the old battlefields of Asterion turned quietly beneath their orbit, scars glowing faintly where heroes once stood. Below, in the cadet halls, word spread of a new inscription carved on the Academy's memorial wall that morning. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew who had written it. It read, "We are not myths. We are the memory of courage." By dusk, the words had been translated into 12 alien languages. When night fell, the lights of the Academy dimmed, and Voss returned to his quarters. The holodisc sat on the table beside his bunk. He stared at it for a long time, then keyed a transmission log. Message to Earth Command, he said quietly. Mission report, truth delivered. Effect still unfolding, he paused. His reflection stared back at him from the glass viewport, eyes ringed with fatigue but steady. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Tell the historians to prepare a new chapter." He ended the recording. Outside, Veloth Prime's twin moons rose, their light pouring across the Academy spires. From above, they looked like two watching eyes, ancient, patient, unblinking, somewhere in the dark between the stars. The echoes of old legends stirred again, not in myth, but in memory, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy remembered what it meant to stand.